We have a very exciting episode today where we're going to talk about the China threat with Asha Castleberry Hernandez. Asha is the first U.S. national security expert and foreign policy executive, strategist, author, former Biden-Harris political appointee, Army veteran, and academic professor.
The role of China in the 21st century international system is very important to discuss because not only we're experiencing the rise, but it's impacting us more domestically.
Valuable and free information from experts are contained in these short 7 to 15 minute podcasts. We want to help people understand the various end-time threats and provide real-time solutions along with the tools needed for their friends, families, and businesses to survive. Followers of our channel can receive a free action guide on each topic weekly. We hope that these guides will help people prepare for the serious threats we all face at this time in history. Hey, Asha.
Hi.
Welcome to the show. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
We're going to talk about a subject that I know you know a lot about. And just to give you a little heads up about this podcast, what's on our heart about this podcast is to show people threats, but not to scare them, but to tell them what's going on, then give them solutions from experts like you that they can see on the podcast, as well as they get an action guide from us that's going to come back to you. They're going to be able to see the podcast again, as well as a written document and ways to get back to your written material and who you are and all the cool stuff that you do. So what I like to do is just ask some questions that I feel like the audience would like to hear about from you. Is that cool?
Yes, absolutely.
So my first question as a security expert, please tell us about China, what the problems are in the country, what you know about it, and obviously there was a Treasury attack a few weeks ago. Tell us what your take on that is as the expert that you are in this field.
Yes, thank you so much. And thank you. This is just a wonderful opportunity to be part of this amazing podcast, theworldthreat.com. So, John, it's just an absolute amazing opportunity to discuss our 21st century national security threats and how it impacts us here at home. And I will tell you, rise in China, or the role of China in the 21st century international system, is very important to discuss because not only we're experiencing the rise, but it's impacting us more domestically. And the unfortunate piece to this is that many Americans don't really know how it impacts us here at home. So I'm here to help explain it. So as far as just looking at the context of China and the background of it, I want to go back to 2018 during the Trump administration, when General Mattis, who at that time Secretary of Defense Mattis, introduced to the country and to the world that the United States is shifting its national security priorities on looking at this new era of strategic competition. Strategic competition meaning that he explained thoroughly that we are now in the era of strategic competition where our near peer competitors, known as Russia and China. And what stood out in his national defense strategy was that when you compare the two, both Russia and China, China is going to be more of our enduring threat, meaning that we are going to be engaged with competing against China in the next 20, 30, or 40 years or beyond, especially when you look at the intent of China, which is by 2040, they are definitely more determined than ever to be the dominant force in the international system or international community. But it goes a little bit beyond just being dominant. The way they're going to be doing that is using coercion. And one way to do that is to undermine American power and also undermine other democratic states as a way to operate in the international system as an autocratic power. And what comes along with that is plain unfair when it comes to interaction with other states. Like a perfect example of that is the Belt and Road Initiative, where China is engaged with so many different developing countries around the world building infrastructure projects. But there's a lot of malpractices that come along with that, where these countries are being ripped off with some of the projects that they're engaged with, where they're building up with cheap products. They're securing deals with them with high interest loans. So When it comes to the United States, one of the primary concerns that we have as far as China during this era of strategic competition is trade, for example. When you look
Yeah.
at the malpractices that they're looking that they're engaged with us, some of these trade deals that we have with them are coming up to be unfair. One is that we have a growing trade deficit, and the other is
Really.
that they're pulling more from us than we are from them. So when it comes to looking at the different domains in strategic competition, ranging from soft security all the way to hard, when you look at the soft security piece, especially economics, China is
Yeah.
definitely more engaged in that than military intelligence community, because they are
Hmm.
seeking to have dominance in economic security as well as technology. So this is one reason why we have to stay engaged with, participating in the World Trade Organization, do more
Hmm.
bilateral deals, I mean, negotiations with China, and looking at some of our trade deals where they have benefited more than us. And
Wow.
this concern actually flared up back in 2015-16, where you saw that a lot of the American people were against, the TPP or other multilat or bilat trade deals with China, because they felt that the American worker was not benefiting, and that they were just, they were losing out in terms of their engagement with other countries. So, in
Hmm.
terms of trade practices, that's important. And this is one reason why both the Biden administration and Trump administration continue the, tariffs overall, because of the fact that they saw these malpractices that China was engaging with us. Other important uh, issues that you have to look at when it comes to strategic competition in China is the technology piece too. China has sold surveillance systems to different countries, whether it was in Israel or Ecuador, and has collect on these different type people within those countries. To where I think
Hmm.
in Ecuador they actually pulled. It might have been Ecuador, or Peru, but they pulled they stopped using their surveillance systems because they were collecting on them. So it's the same type of thing, and that's why we saw the Chinese balloon, or you see, these
Oh.
mysterious drones. They're kind of connected to the PRC, where they're collecting on us and trying to collect on our private information, or on our military installations, or nuclear sites that are located in the United States. And one reason why they do that is because, again, they want to learn more. They want to compete against us. So, in order to compete against your competitor, you have to constantly
Yes.
collect data on that person. This is why, for the United States, because we're an open society, it's easy for them to come in, collect on us, and use that information against us.
Like with that balloon, which freaked everybody out about a year ago.
Mhm.
Do you think because of your background that was a trial run for an EMP?
Possibly, yes. I mean, for the yes, in terms of like collecting data on us,
Hmm.
absolutely. And I think there's a lot of attempts that have happened where we have known overtly, like that balloon, that they're collecting on us, and then covertly, there's other mechanisms that they use to collect on us. So again, it's easier for them to do that than for us to engage in them, because
Okay.
they have more of a closed, controlled society.
It's more of an economic thing though than a military thing, is what you're saying, right?
Yes,
With them,
economics and
where
technology.
Russia's a military thing, where you think China's more of an economic thing, just trying to control the economy.
Yes. And I think for Russia, for the most part, it's more military and more short term too, as well.
Hmm.
I don't see the Russians engage in a long, vision of achieving dominance over the United States. I see it more short term and more
Hmm.
engaging with the energy sector as well as military, but definitely more military. When you look at the fentanyl crisis, that's another dynamic too as well. The fentanyl crisis is growing in the United States, where the average American has been impacted, especially in places like Philadelphia and other parts of the United States, to where we're noticing the flow of these illicit drugs coming from the Mexican border is actually connected to, uh, the black market or groups in the PRC. And how do we know this for a fact? Well, that was one of the talking points between President Xi and President Biden when they met in San Francisco last year. And what we learned over time is that China was tied in to that problem, and it was like an interconnected, network between the PRC, Mexican cartel, and other groups in the United States.
So they deny the fact that they're pushing fentanyl in this country. Is that what you're saying?
Well, President Xi is denying it, but that does not mean there's a disconnect, right? Because I'm pretty sure President Xi said to President Biden, there are black groups, or groups within the black market in China that's probably more orchestrated, right, with what's going on. But we know, in terms of competition, we can't cancel out. There is a likelihood that they're fine with this crisis because when it comes to use of drugs and impacting American people, that makes us less competitive in terms of the quality assurance within the country. So, but I would say it's definitely on paper, President Xi is saying, oh, yeah, we have nothing to do with that. That's probably, a black market connected, that's not government, associated. So,
And I think everybody, it's kind of on their mind with what's going on, like the balloons and everything is being made in China right now, how our economy is driven on it. But part of what I looked at when I looked at you, your experiences, how did you get involved in the foreign policy making experience? How'd that tie into your life?
I just recently published a book called Why National Security Matters. And in the book, I mentioned that when I was a junior in college, I actually studied abroad to Shanghai, China. And this was 2005. So the reason why I decided to study in China is because I wanted to learn more about international law and economics. I was during that time determined to be a JAG lawyer. Uh, yes, in the military. So I wanted to learn more about um, just about international law itself. So I received a partial scholarship to study, and I'm not going to lie to you. When I actually studied in Shanghai, China, I did not expect to find out how the different dynamics that happen or what I observed or witnessed. Um, and there was a lot of different ones. One was definitely learning about the global economy, how many U.S. companies were actually co-located in Shanghai, and so that was interesting to watch. And then also how quick they were moving, so you could kind of see the intent of a post Deng Xiaoping economic reform and how quick they were moving in terms of development, wanting to be more part of the global economy, and just the economic ambition. Many of us don't know about the Chinese culture or what they're doing because many of us are not studying abroad to places
Right.
like China. So I think when it comes to now applying strategic competition, it is more important than ever that we proliferate the number of Chinese experts in the United States. Not only because it's important in terms of learning about the global economy, but it makes us more competitive overall. So it does make me feel a bit disappointed that there's more of them learning about us than we learn about them.
Huh.
Yes.
Well, that's a good idea. So, in just a couple minutes, part of what the idea of this podcast is to help people have peace, not just a. I mean, the information you gave is we're going to have to unpack all that interaction, guy, because it's a lot of content. And it's great. I mean, you've paid your dues here. The thing about it is that in the audience that we have, the people that are watching this in the business, what in a couple minutes, what would you say to our audience about how to prepare and have peace about all this?
Yes. Thank you for the question. Definitely, for once, be traditional about it. Sit at home at your kitchen tables during dinner with your family and practice the level of strategic predictability and discuss
Hmm.
that with your children or kids or next generation coming up. what does the world look like when it comes to us as a family? How do
Mm-hmm.
we going to adapt with the new world? And think of ways or discuss with your children, this is how we would have to deal with a rise in China in the future. China is even a important discussion point when it comes to entertainment, where they have been able to buy up some of Hollywood, right? Or you have
Mm-hmm.
the governor of Iowa who has a special relationship with President Xi, right? So having those
Huh.
discussions are very important. Then you have to, as a family unit, what can we do to safeguard ourselves from China, right? As far as potential threats, or what are ways we can cooperate with China too, right? I'm not just purely saying they are our adversary. No, they're our competitor. And so in some ways we have
Mm.
to work with China, in some ways we have to compete against them, and in some ways there are things that China can do that are come across adversarial. So these are the discussions that I'm asking the American people to have, with their family. And then you can expand out to your colleagues or your friends, your next door neighbors, but those discussions need to happen.
As a businessman, I get that. That's a really cool concept because if I look at China as a competitor, not just an adversary, that's a whole different thought process for business people to think about how they should deal with that instead of just seeing them as an enemy, but a competitor. Then it comes down to marketing, it comes down to strategy. And the small business in America, it's hard to compete with China and what they're doing. It's a good thing that you're bringing to us. I'd like to come back to you later on a different podcast and talk more about how you see this works in things like what happened with this thing at the Treasury where they did some cyber stuff and your take on that. So I know you're busy and running around crazy, but I'd like to thank you for your day.
Yes.
And watch for this. We're going to put this out in a couple of weeks, and everybody will be able to see this. And we really appreciate you taking the time to spend this time with us and give us this heads up about China. It's on everybody's mind. It's a very good topic. So have a good day.
You too. Thank you so much, John.
I hope you're blessed with this information. Please like, subscribe, and click on the notification tab to our channel, and we will send you advance notices about upcoming threats to be discussed. Remember to capture the free action guides via our QR code embedded in the episode at the end. As a registered follower of the Worldwide Threat Podcast, you have our permission to download and share every episode and free action guide with your friends, family, and other businesses. Each Thursday, we'll post a new subject for you to consider and discuss. Set your watch to watch and to download the free action guide. Thank you. This is John White, the host of the Worldwide Threat Podcast. Please check out everything we're doing, and blessings to you and your family.